In the parts of your own faith and traditions that you've stepped away from, what have you left behind, and what's important to keep?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think for me, what I've left behind is just the idea that only certain people are allowed to share that God is love. I obviously, as a woman even though our denomination was started by a woman, women as pastors was not necessarily accepted. It was said that we were, but we weren't. And just the ideas of there's certain people that get to share, certain people that don't get to share. And even if you are a woman, you can really only share to these groups, children and missionaries. Those are the only, So,
Well, and the women's group.
well, yeah, the women's group.
Yeah.
But where there are male voices, you can only share if they're a child or from another country. So for me, I mean, all of that, I just think is horrible. But what I want to take with me is what I see happening in the Bible, which is transformation. That idea of, being reflective and understanding the whys in which I do things or don't do things. Where have I put my ego first instead of, just love first? And I think when you really get into the life of Jesus and how he walked, what he brings is transformation to people and acceptance and solidarity. And I love that. And so that part of my tradition I want to continue with, but also bring it to the people that have felt, especially in evangelical circles, that they were not allowed to participate. That was the thing that always hurt me, as somebody who was also told I can't really participate. That's what I got. Your turn.
So there's a lot of gaslighting that happens in Christian churches. And I've taken to calling it gaslighting instead of pretending it's anything other than that, since we now have a word for that, because there's the message that we all get that God is love, God loves us, God loves you, God loves me, we're one big family. And there's always a but in churches, and a lot of times for me, growing up, it's like, but, you're moving around too much in the church service, you're too squiggly, wiggly, you ask too many questions, all that stuff. Why do you care so much about that? Because I was this nerdy kid and, it's not cool to be nerdy and want to learn about things and stuff like that. So that's some of the stuff coming from the kids. But then, it took a long time because I am a different generation, because I'm older than Jacob is, even, as you all know. And as I was beginning to have this understanding of who I was as a lesbian, as someone in the queer community, it was really clear that was not okay in the churches. And so you'd have to hide parts of yourself. There was never enough room for all of who I was, I guess, So I'm leaving behind that judgment. And, earlier, Jacob, you talked about making yourself smaller.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
To fit in the spaces. And I spent a lot of time making myself smaller, checking parts of myself at the door that weren't acceptable, and trying to make myself fit what I thought they wanted in whatever space I was in. And I am leaving that all behind. I am bringing my full, crazy, boisterous, snorting when I laugh self. That's one of the things on the podcast. It's like, if I don't get at least one snort in each episode, it's like not a good episode.
Yeah, I'd count myself as a failure. Yeah, if I haven't elicited a snort.
I wasn't funny enough. I didn't get a snort today.
I know, sorry. And because to me, that's about judgment too. So much of Christian churches is about judgment and who's in and who's out. It's that very in and out mentality. And it's different for different churches based on socioeconomic status, what you drive up in and what kind of car, what you look like, what gender, what race, what language is your primary language. I mean, there's so many layers to what is in and what is out. And so I'm leaving all that behind, and I am keeping that our path is love, and that our primary job in our life is to learn how to love, and that is the hardest thing to learn how to do. Of what does it really mean to walk the path of love? And Jesus is an amazing example of what that meant. And I think most Christians today, especially when we look at the ideas of Christian nationalism that we're really grappling with in Christianity in the United States today, Jesus didn't pick up a gun. Jesus didn't pick up a sword. Jesus didn't fight back. And Jesus was not a violent person. And so much of our lives are determined by this. Well, how do I get that person back? And how do I keep my sense of self-respect and all that kind of stuff? And walking the path of love takes us in a totally different direction from that. And I think it's so hard to do and so challenging, and ultimately, though, so healing. I think that is a path to healing, is really learning how to love. And, in church, I would always say, what are we called to do? We're called to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. And in the MCC context, I would often say, and learn to love ourselves as much as we love our neighbors and love God. Because self-love, I think, is, especially for those in communities that have been othered, that self-love is one of the most challenging things to claim for ourselves. So, again, a very long answer to a pretty short question, but that's par for the course for me, I guess. But what a good question. Thank you, Jacob.